It happened the day before junior prom. I remember because I'd spent the entire week helping Leah pick out the perfect dress. She couldn't decide between lilac or gold, so I took photos of her twirling in both and voted for the one that made her look like she belonged on a magazine cover. That's what best friends did. Or so I thought. We'd been inseparable since second grade, matching friendship bracelets, birthday sleepovers, the whole thing. I told her everything. Including how nervous I was about my boyfriend Josh. He was sweet but shy, and I worried prom would be awkward. She promised to help. And help she did. I walked into the gym after yearbook club, and there they were. Her hands in his hair. His lips on hers. My stomach turned, but I didn't cry. Not until she saw me, pulled away, and actually laughed. Then she said the sentence that burned itself into my memory. It was just a dare. Don't be dramatic. I didn't wait for Josh's excuse. I walked out of that gym and never looked back. By Monday, I had submitted the forms to transfer schools. My parents thought it was about college prep. I let them believe it. I didn't say a word to Leah. I deleted every photo, every chat. Started over. Senior year was quiet, and college wasn't easy. I buried myself in work, built a side hustle designing websites for small brands, and slowly turned that into a boutique creative agency. By graduation, I had 5 employees and a roster of bridal vendors who trusted me more than their own cousins. I didn't date for a long time. Trust came slow after that kind of betrayal. But work made sense. Effort in. Results out. By 25, I had acquired a struggling vineyard that doubled as a wedding venue. It needed help, but I saw the potential. A year later, we were booked solid through the next 2 summers. My company handled everything in-house. Florals, music, gowns, branding, even digital invites. We did it all. Quietly. Elegantly. And with the kind of anonymity that made our clients feel like royalty. Which is why, when the inquiry came in from Aaliyah Parker, I almost didn't believe it. I clicked the form twice just to be sure. She didn't recognize my married name. She couldn't have. I'd changed my social profiles, taken my mother's surname, and kept my face off the site. But I recognized her immediately. The same curling handwriting. The same obsession with gold accents. And the kicker? She asked for a discounted package. Said she was basically an influencer. I should have deleted the email. I should have forwarded it to someone else. Instead, I opened her Pinterest board. Everything was exactly how I would have planned my own wedding in high school. Rustic blush tones. Hanging fairy lights. A live acoustic guitarist. She even picked one of the sample dresses I designed under a private label. That's when the plan started forming. I didn't want revenge. Not exactly. I just wanted her to remember. To realize. To feel it the way I had. We set up the first meeting virtually. My assistant handled the call while I observed off camera. Leah didn't recognize her name either. The assistant's. She just gushed about how she was so glad your boss is hands off. I hate when planners act like it's their wedding. My assistant smirked, took notes, and forwarded me everything. Venue? Booked under a corporate holding. Gown? We'd custom alter one of our existing designs to her exact specs, but leave a surprise in the stitching. Playlist? I had a few ideas. The thing about betrayal is it doesn't rot in your chest. It calcifies. Turns to stone. Becomes something you build around. By the time the wedding week came, I had nearly forgotten how much it used to hurt. Until I saw her again. In person. At the rehearsal. She was exactly the same. Same blonde highlights. Same high-pitched voice. Same way she leaned too close to the men she wasn't dating. But what got me most was that she smiled at me like we were old friends. Thank you for stepping in last minute, she said, adjusting her earring. The old bridesmaid dropped out and I didn't want an empty spot. You look so familiar, have we met? I smiled and told her I just had one of those faces. She didn't question it. Not once. And that told me everything. Her fiancé was harmless. A little dull, if I'm honest. But kind. He didn't deserve the chaos he was marrying into. None of them knew the truth. About what she'd done. About what she'd cost me. But they would. Eventually. Starting with the rehearsal dinner playlist. When she walked into the vineyard's great hall, dressed in silk and sequins, the music shifted. From soft instrumentals to something sharper. I watched her face freeze as the chorus hit. It was a song from junior prom. The one I told her I wanted for my first dance. The one she said was too cheesy. It played in full. And I didn't blink. Just smiled. Leah didn't say anything that night, but I saw the flicker. The way her eyes darted toward the DJ, then back to me. It didn't matter that I wasn't supposed to know the song's significance, she knew. She remembered. But Leah had always been good at pretending. She clinked her glass, gave a tipsy little toast about friendship lasting through everything, and carried on like she hadn't once kissed my boyfriend for sport and laughed about it. The other bridesmaids took selfies with her all night. I posed when I had to, then slipped away before dessert. I had work to do. The wedding gown had arrived from our design house 2 days earlier. Leah had no idea it came from my brand. I'd pulled the label, rebranded the packaging, and added a special touch inside the lining. A single phrase, stitched just below the waist where no one else would see it. Just a dare. In the same cursive she used in middle school. It was petty. It was cruel. But it was mine. The morning of the wedding, everything ran like clockwork. That's the benefit of owning the whole production. I didn't need permission to make changes. I didn't need to explain why the string quartet took a break just as she walked down the aisle, allowing a soft instrumental version of our junior prom song to carry through the vineyard. I didn't need to justify why the champagne flutes were tinted lilac and gold. Or why the wedding favors included custom mirror compacts engraved with the phrase "truth always shows." Little things. Subtle things. But Leah noticed. I saw it in her tight smile. Her glances at me grew more frequent, more suspicious. During bridal prep, she finally asked, "Are you sure we've never met?" I was curling one of the other bridesmaids' hair. I didn't even look at her. Maybe at a wedding expo? She tilted her head. Maybe. You look a lot like someone I knew in high school. Funny, I said, clipping the curl in place. So do you. Her brow twitched, just a little. But she didn't push. Not yet. After the ceremony, I slipped into the control booth beside the DJ, who worked for me. We'd loaded a playlist of her favorites, pulled from her old public Spotify account, every song she'd once made fun of me for loving. Every song she said was too sad, too soft, too try-hard. They played one by one, a slow soundtrack to her perfect day. By the time dinner was served, she was fraying at the edges. "Are you sure you don't know that girl?" I heard her whisper to one of the bridesmaids. The brunette in the emerald dress. "She's been staring at me all day." "She's part of the planning team," the bridesmaid shrugged. "Probably just making sure you don't trip." But Leah didn't believe it. She was never the kind of person who let things go. During her father's toast, I watched her mouth the words to the speech, like she had edited it herself. She probably had. I couldn't help wondering if she'd always been like this, and I just didn't want to see it. Or if something in her changed when she realized she could get away with hurting people, smiling through it, and blaming it on a dare. The night wore on. Speeches gave way to dancing. Her husband, kind, polite, slightly boring, took her hand for their first dance. And right on cue, the music changed. Not the instrumental she'd picked. Not the soft waltz. But a slow acoustic version of a song that was unmistakably mine. The one I told her I'd always imagined dancing to. The one she'd stolen. I watched her eyes go wide. I watched her glance around in panic, too shocked to stop the music. Her husband kept dancing, smiling, whispering something sweet in her ear. She was trapped. In the spotlight. With the ghost of her own lie playing over the speakers. That's when she made her way to me. During the cake cutting, while everyone was watching the couple feed each other overly expensive buttercream, she stepped off the platform and walked straight up to me. "What's your name?" she asked. Her tone was sharp now. Not sweet. Not fake. Just suspicious. I looked her dead in the eye. "Claire." "Claire what?" I tilted my head. "Do you ask all your vendors for their full names the day of your wedding?" She didn't blink. "Did you go to Northridge High?" I smiled. Briefly. Her mouth opened, then shut. She looked like she wanted to say something else, to accuse me, maybe. But the MC was calling her back to the dance floor, and appearances were everything to her. So she turned. Went back. Smiled. Posed for pictures. But I knew that smile. Knew the strain in her jaw. The tremble in her fingers. The seed had been planted. She remembered. She just didn't understand how much I remembered too. The night wound down with fairy lights glowing overhead and a soft breeze carrying the scent of wine and roses through the air. Guests drifted toward the shuttles, some tipsy, others teary, all murmuring about how magical it had been. Leah smiled through it, accepting compliments like a queen being crowned. But her eyes kept darting toward me. Toward the shadows I moved through. She didn't know if she was imagining it. That was the beauty of it. I didn't need to confront her. The doubt would do the work for me. I waited until she stepped away from the crowd, her heels clicking against the cobblestone as she made her way toward the private garden behind the main hall. I followed. Quietly. She was standing near the fountain, the one she requested we decorate in blush roses. She didn't turn around. "It's you, isn't it?" she said softly. "You're Claire." "That's what the name tag says," I replied. "Don't be cute." Her voice had lost its charm. "You're her. From junior year. You're the girl who transferred." I took a step closer. "You're the girl who kissed her best friend's boyfriend for fun." "It wasn't," she started, then stopped. "It was a dare," I said. "Right. That's what you told me. Then you laughed." She finally turned to face me. Her makeup was still perfect. Her dress still stunning. But her expression was cracked. "I didn't know it would ruin things for you," she said. "I thought you'd be mad for a day. I thought you'd get over it. You thought I'd laugh with you about it later." She swallowed. "It wasn't even about Josh. He liked you. I was bored. I wanted to see if I could." "You did," I said. "And I left. You won. Isn't that what you wanted?" "It was high school," she said, exasperated. "People make mistakes. And weddings," I said, voice calm, "are the perfect time to celebrate growth, forgiveness, moving on." Her brow furrowed. "Is that what this is? Some elaborate closure thing?" I laughed. Not loudly. Just enough. "Do you think I went through all this to get closure? I already had that. Years ago. The minute I realized I didn't miss you." "Then why are you here?" "Because you invited me." "I didn't know it was you," she snapped. "Exactly," I said. "And that's why I'm here." She blinked, caught off guard. "You invited me into your most perfect day. Into your photos. Your memories. Your wedding album. And you never even noticed." "That's messed up," she muttered. "So is kissing your best friend's boyfriend and calling it a joke." Silence stretched between us. Then she said, almost defensively, "Josh cheated on me a year later, by the way. So it's not like you missed out." "I know," I said. "I interviewed him for a consulting role. Didn't hire him." Her jaw tightened. "You're sick." "No," I said. "I'm successful. There's a difference." She stared at me like she didn't know whether to slap me or cry. I didn't care which. "You've always wanted people to look at you," I said. "Well, they are. You're beautiful. You're married. You got everything you wanted. So enjoy it." "You ruined my wedding," she hissed. "No," I said, stepping back into the shadows, "I just made it unforgettable." I left her standing there by the fountain, still beautiful, still golden, but shaken. When I got back to the main hall, the cleanup crew had already begun. I stayed a few minutes longer, watching the lights come down, the florals packed up. My assistant handed me the final invoice for signature. "Think she'll figure it all out?" she asked. "Eventually," I said. "But by then, the photos will be printed, the videos edited. Her whole wedding tied to my fingerprints." "You're diabolical," she said, impressed. "I'm thorough," I replied. I left the venue around midnight, heels in hand, moonlight washing over the gravel drive. I didn't feel victorious. Not exactly. I just felt clear. The past wasn't a wound anymore. It was a reminder of who I used to be. And who I became when I stopped letting people like Leah define me. She might never apologize. Might never admit it mattered. But every time she looks at her wedding album, hears that song, or glances at the stitching inside her gown, she'll remember. And that was enough. 3 months after the wedding, I got an email from an unfamiliar address with the subject line, "Hey." The body of the message was short. Just a sentence. "Was it really you?" I didn't reply. Leah had my contact now, and that was the real sting. She hadn't just been outplayed. She'd invited me to do it. She handed me the mic, the spotlight, and the stage, all while calling it a gift. I archived the message and went back to work. We had just closed on another venue, this time in the mountains, and I was in the middle of hiring. But the past has a way of resurfacing. A week later, a package showed up at the office. No note. Just a wedding favor mirror. The same ones from her wedding. On the back, scribbled in pen, were the words, "You win." I didn't know if she meant it sarcastically or sincerely. But I didn't need her to mean it. The truth was, I didn't win. I just stopped losing. There's a difference. Because when Leah kissed Josh and laughed in my face, I had let it bury me. But now? Now I could look at that moment as the reason I built everything. The betrayal pushed me. The silence after helped me focus. I'd spent years thinking closure came from an apology. But it didn't. It came from taking control of the narrative. A few weeks later, I was at a networking event for female-led businesses in the wedding industry. I wasn't speaking, just attending, but someone recognized me and dragged me into a circle of founders discussing vendor partnerships. One of them, a petite woman in lavender silk, mentioned working with a client who insisted on using an obscure dress brand. She said it was the one that girl from prom designed, the woman said, laughing. I guess there's this rumor going around. About a wedding revenge plot? My ears perked up. What rumor? The woman leaned in. Apparently this bridesmaid turned venue owner sabotaged an old friend's wedding. All hush-hush, but people are calling it the silk stitch scandal. It's gone semi-viral on bridal forums. Sounds like an urban legend, I said, keeping my face neutral. Maybe. But whoever did it? Iconic. She raised her glass to that. Later that night, I searched the forums. She wasn't wrong. There were threads. Theories. Posts about mystery vendors and subtle sabotage. Nobody knew who I was. But the story was spreading. They talked about it like folklore. A myth. Some commenters called it toxic. Others called it justice. A few claimed it was fake. But the best part? Leah was now a cautionary tale. A warning. The girl who underestimated someone for the last time. My assistant printed out the top thread and pinned it to our office corkboard. For inspiration, she said. Or maybe just morale. We all laughed. My company was thriving. Our bookings doubled. Clients loved the brand's unflinching attention to detail, which, to be fair, wasn't wrong. I still got the occasional message from old classmates. Some were curious. Some were apologetic. A few tried to reconnect, pretending we'd always been close. I responded to none. My past didn't need revisiting. It needed repurposing. That's what I'd done. Turned something painful into something profitable. But I didn't stop there. A year after Leah's wedding, I got an invitation in the mail. A baby shower. Her name was on it. The host? Her older cousin, someone who once laughed at me behind a locker. I turned the card over in my hand. Then I smiled. And made a call. We're sponsoring a new line of shower experiences, I told my team. Targeted at high-end expectant mothers. I want a sample event designed and branded by next quarter. My assistant raised a brow. Any reason? Let's just say, I replied, I want us to stay ahead of the trend. Because if there's one thing Leah taught me, it's that people rarely change. They just pivot. And if she pivoted into mommy blogger territory, I'd be waiting. With a venue. A product line. And a polished, perfect smile. The baby shower launch was a success. Elegant pastel palettes, customizable menus, and curated playlists tailored to each guest of honor. We didn't market it with my name, just the brand. That was the trick. I let the story speak louder than the storyteller. Within 2 months, we had 5 bookings. Then 10. Then a sponsorship from a luxury diaper brand I used to mock in college. But I wasn't laughing now. I was strategizing. Watching the algorithms. Reading the posts. Leah wasn't tagging me, of course. She didn't know I was behind any of it. But her cousin did. And her cousin was tagging everything. #showergoals, #grateful to be hosted by the best. The photos were everywhere, peach-toned cupcakes, monogrammed baby blankets, a floral arch shaped like a cradle. She was trying to build influence. Build a name. She'd changed her username to Leah Grace Mama, and her feed was filled with perfectly filtered bump shots, real talk captions about swollen ankles, and product reviews she clearly didn't write herself. She was trying to do what I did. Rebrand. Reinvent. Monetize the moment. But she didn't have the teeth for it. Or the memory. Because a month after her shower went viral, she sent me another email. This time under her own name. Hey. I think we should talk. That was it. No explanation. No apology. Just an open door. I didn't reply. I forwarded it to my assistant with one instruction: flag and archive. I wasn't going back. I had no reason to. But then, 2 weeks later, I was speaking on a panel about personal branding at a Women in Tech conference. Halfway through the Q&A, a familiar voice piped up from the back of the room. What advice would you give someone who made a huge mistake, public or private, and wants to rebuild their image? The room was silent. My eyes scanned the crowd. And there she was. Hair darker now. Minimal makeup. No bump. Just Leah. Alone. She looked older. Softer. Smaller. I stepped closer to the mic. Own your story, I said. But understand you don't get to control how other people remember it. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Leah's eyes didn't leave mine. What if they won't forgive you? She asked. I took a long breath. Then you don't build your comeback around their forgiveness. You build it without them. That answer got a round of applause. But all I could hear was the silence between us. After the panel, she waited near the exit. I walked past her. She reached out, touched my arm. Claire. I stopped. Looked at her hand. Then at her face. It really was just a dare, she whispered. I smiled. And this? All of this? Was just business. I walked away. She didn't follow. I don't know what she wanted from me in that moment. Closure, maybe. Clarity. An undo button. But I wasn't 17 anymore. I wasn't the girl with mascara running down her cheeks in a school hallway. I was the woman who could walk into any room and own it. Quietly. Strategically. Completely. I didn't need revenge. I was living proof she never broke me. And that, I realized, was the real ending to our story. Not the kiss. Not the dress. Not the stitched phrase or the viral thread. The real ending was this: she would always remember me. And I would barely remember her. Months passed. The Leah chapter faded into background noise. Her post slowed, her brand dimmed. The momentum she'd tried to build never quite took off. There were whispers that the mom influencer deals dried up. Some said her cousin moved on to a new it girl. Others said she simply stopped trying. I didn't dig. I had too much on my plate. My agency had expanded to include destination weddings, baby moons, and luxury elopements. We'd launched a podcast. A collaboration with a designer shoe brand. A pilot reality show pitch. All of it built on the same principle: flawless control of the narrative. I didn't need to be the face. I was the foundation. And yet, every so often, I'd get a reminder. A message. A look. A pause. Like the one I got at a high-end networking gala 6 months after the conference. A woman in a black jumpsuit introduced herself, shook my hand, and said, "My little sister had the vineyard wedding last year, the one with the mirror compacts. She still talks about it." I smiled, polite and practiced. She leaned in. She also said there was some drama. That one of the bridesmaids got the last laugh. I didn't confirm or deny it. I just raised my glass. Later that evening, I stepped out onto the balcony overlooking the city. The lights below looked like stars flipped upside down. I'd once dreamed of living in this skyline. Now I own 3 of the buildings in view. My phone buzzed. A text from my assistant. It was a screenshot from a local bridal forum. The thread title: "You'll never guess which ex-friend planned my entire wedding, without me realizing." The post was long. Rambling. But the tone was unmistakable. I didn't know it was her. She never said her name. I figured it out after the dress came back from preservation. There was stitching in the lining. It said, "Just a dare." The comments were brutal. Some called her out for what she'd done in high school. Others laughed at how elegantly she'd been outmaneuvered. A few sympathized. But most sided with the planner. With me. One reply read, "If she built an empire just to outgrow your betrayal, that's not revenge. That's poetry." I locked my phone. Stared at the lights. That's what people didn't understand. I never needed her to lose. I just needed to remember that I could win. Without her. Without them. Without anyone holding my hand or whispering that I was too sensitive, too dramatic, too much. I let them think that for years. That I overreacted. That I disappeared. That I couldn't take a joke. But now, when they talked about that vineyard, or that wedding, or that stitched phrase, they weren't talking about Leah. They were talking about me. Even if they didn't know it. I didn't have to remind anyone who I was. The work spoke for itself. The silence was over. The story had been told. And I was already writing the next one. The next story came wrapped in a glossy envelope with gold foil trim and hand-lettered script that read Madison and Drew. I almost tossed it in the stack of industry samples, until I noticed the return address. My old neighborhood. The one I hadn't driven through in nearly a decade. I opened it slowly. Inside was a wedding invitation, formal, elegant, overly frilled. Madison Reynolds. Another name from the past. She used to sit 2 desks behind me in AP Chemistry. Once told everyone I'd worn the same dress to 2 parties because she probably can't afford new ones. That was before I even started the agency. Before I learned how to hide steel beneath satin. I hadn't heard her name in years. But apparently, she hadn't forgotten me. The invitation was handwritten. Claire, I'd be honored if you joined as a guest. We've come a long way since high school, haven't we? It didn't say sorry. It didn't say thank you. Just a vague nod at a shared past she assumed I'd remember with fondness. I RSVP'd yes. Not because I wanted revenge. Not because I had something to prove. But because I wanted to see what they saw now when they looked at me. I arrived in a sleek black dress from one of our private labels. My driver dropped me at the estate entrance where a valet whisked my car away like I was royalty. I didn't wear anything flashy. I didn't have to. The whispers followed me anyway. Is that her? That's the one who owns that bridal company. She's the one from the Leah story, right? Madison didn't approach me until after the ceremony. She walked straight over, champagne in hand, smile too bright. I'm so glad you could come, she said. I wasn't sure if you'd remember me. Of course I remember, I said, taking the glass. How could I forget? Her smile faltered for half a second. Just enough. I've been following your work, she added. Very impressive. Thank you. I thought about reaching out after Leah's wedding. I heard rumors. People always talk. They said you planned the whole thing as a setup. I tilted my head. Is that what she told you? She won't talk about it, Madison admitted. She deleted most of the photos. Changed her last name online. Sounds like a rebrand, I said. Smart move. Madison hesitated. Was it true? About the dress? The song? The stitching? I took a slow sip of champagne. What would be the point of a setup if no one realized it until after the vows? She stared at me, trying to read between the lines. But there was nothing to find. Just a mirror. I didn't need to explain. That was the difference between who I used to be and who I am now. Back then, I would have begged someone to believe me. To understand why it mattered. Now, I let them draw their own conclusions. Because no matter what version they chose to believe, I was still the one in control of the story. Madison's wedding was lovely. The flowers were from one of our partners. The band, too. She didn't know it, but my company had touched nearly every part of her day. Just like Leah's. Just like dozens of others. I was the thread they couldn't see, woven through their moments, invisible but undeniable. And as I walked out under the arch of sparklers that night, I smiled to myself. I didn't need to sabotage anyone. I didn't need to whisper old truths. I'd already won. The past used to haunt me. Now it built my brand. The girls who once made me feel small now walked through doors I designed, posed under lights I arranged, danced to music I chose. They would never forget me. Even when they thought they had. Especially then. A year later, a magazine requested an interview. Not just a quote or a blurb, an actual spread. The woman behind the weddings, the email said. They wanted photos, personal anecdotes, maybe even a sidebar on the viral Leah story. Of course, they didn't know it was Leah. Or me. Just the myth. I agreed, on one condition. I wouldn't confirm or deny any rumors. They could print whatever narrative they liked, as long as they understood I wouldn't answer directly. Makes it more intriguing, the editor said. Mystique is half the brand. We did the shoot at my newest venue, a glass greenhouse in the hills that overlooked an orchard. I wore black again. Simple lines. Understated elegance. Let the surroundings shine. That was always my way. The article dropped 2 weeks later. The headline read, Whispers, Weddings, and the Woman Who Owns the Aisle. It went viral by noon. Not because of what I said, but because of what I didn't. The comments exploded. Everyone had a theory. About which wedding was which. About who the dare girl was. About whether I'd planned it all or just stepped in and let karma do the work. Theories ranged from ridiculous to surprisingly accurate. A few mentioned Leah by name, but she didn't comment. She never would. What could she say? That I stitched a message in her dress? That I made her walk down the aisle to a song she once stole? That I stood by while her entire day became a mirror held up to her past? She couldn't. Because admitting any of it would be admitting that she knew what she'd done. And I don't think she ever wanted to say it out loud. That was the final thread, the last stitch in the whole story. I didn't destroy her. I didn't expose her. I let her live in the silence she made for herself. Meanwhile, the article brought in a flood of new clients. Everyone wanted this signature mystery touch, even if they couldn't name it. I became the planner for people who wanted their day to feel cinematic. Meaningful. Maybe even a little dangerous. And I delivered. Always. On one of my off days, I went back to my old neighborhood. Just to see. The high school was still there. Smaller than I remembered. Faded bricks. Same chip sign. I parked across the street and sat in the car. I didn't get out. Didn't need to. I didn't feel small anymore. I didn't feel like the girl who cried in the gym bathroom or transferred mid-semester to escape the weight of a dare. I felt like the woman who turned those cracks into power lines. On the way home, I passed a bookstore. In the window was a new release, a memoir by a minor influencer with a familiar face and a fake smile. Leah. I nearly laughed. The title was something vague: grace, growth, and glitter. I walked in, flipped through it. No mention of me. Of course not. But in the acknowledgements, she wrote, "To the friend who disappeared, you were right to." I put the book down, walked out, and never looked back. Because I didn't need her words. I had my own. Stitched into gowns. Whispered into playlists. Hidden behind smiles and sparklers and silence. She gave me a dare. I turned it into an empire.